Many things in the past, when viewed today, get passed over without proper recognition for what they are or were. What do I mean? Well, we read about a covenant and think of it much like a simple handshake agreement, or maybe we even liken it to a signed contract. But is that all it was? So Genesis 21, 22 through 34 tells us a story about an oath at a well, and it is our focus in this lesson today. So, Genesis 21, 22 through 24, it says, about this time, Abimelech came with Phicol, his army commander, to visit Abraham. God is obviously with you, helping you in everything you do, Abimelech said. Swear to me in God's name that you will never deceive me, my children, or any of my descendants. I've been loyal to you, so now swear that you will be loyal to me and to this country where you are living as a foreigner. And Abram replied, yes, I swear to it. Then Abram complained to Abimelech about a well that Abimelech's servants had taken by force from Abraham's servants. This is the first I've heard of it, Abimelech answered. I have no idea who is responsible. You've never complained about this before. Abram then gave some of his sheep, goats, and cattle to Abimelech, and they made a treaty. And Abram also took 7 additional female lambs and set them off by themselves. And Abimelech said, why have you set these 7 apart from the others? And Abraham replied, please accept these 7 lambs to show your agreement that I dug this well. Then he named the place Beersheba, which means well of the oath, because that is where they had sworn the oath. After making their covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech left with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned home to the land of the Philistines. Then Abram planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and there he worshipped the Lord, the eternal God. And Abram lived as a foreigner in Philistine country for a long time. Okay. Here's the backstory. Do you remember when Abram went to live in a land and he told the king that Sarah was his sister? Guess who the king was? Abimelech. That's who's saying, don't deceive me. Right? They had a history. And so the reality is that is the king. This is the land. And if you look back to the lesson we had last week, where Hagar has her eyes opened by God and she sees the well. This is the well. She called it the well of the oath. Now here's Abraham, he's getting ready to call it the well of the oath. And so they start out this discussion. And Abimelech is not trusting, shall we say, of Abraham because of their previous experience. But he recognizes that God has given him favor, that he's receiving favor from God. And so he comes to him and he says, hey, look, let's make a vow here that you're not going to deceive me or my children or my descendants. You're going to play nice. Because God obviously cares about you. I want to make sure that we're playing nice and you're going to do good. Now, there are 2 things in the Bible that we run across and we kind of look at them interchangeably. And those 2 things are vows and oaths. But they are not the same. Okay? Typically, a vow is where you commit to doing something or not doing something as a force of your will by way of a set of circumstances. Okay? So I promise I won't hit you when I see a Volkswagen go by anymore. Yes, I know some of you do remember punch buggies, yes. Or it might be, I swear to you, I am going to punch you every time I see a Volkswagen go by. Okay? That would be more of a vow. Okay? And so then we have oaths, and I'm going to talk about oaths a little bit further in a minute. But this is essentially what's happening right here. Is Ambilicek is saying, let's make a vow here that you're not gonna do this, right? Now, because I like word studies and things, what does Abraham mean? What does Abraham mean? Father, right? We know about the promises to Abraham, father of a nation, all that stuff, right? What about Ambilicek? What does that mean? Father. Okay? So here's two guys who have a promise in their name of being father. And we have stress in their relationship because there was some deceit, things that went on that shouldn't. They're trying to work it out. And Ambilicek is saying, look, I see God's relationship with you, that you have favor. And who knows, he might have been dealing with some, like, why does he get the favor? I've been square, right? And so here at this well that they named Beersheba, well of the oath, is where we find ourselves looking at this story today. And Ambilicek starts off this relationship by saying, it's not you, it's me. Right? He says, I see there's favor in your life, but can you swear to me you're not going to cheat? Please. Not me, not my kids, not my descendants. We just play square since you're a foreigner here anyway. Right? And Abraham responds and says, I swear. Okay? I vow. No more faking you out about who my wife is and causing those problems. I swear to it. Not happening. But then I want you to see what happens next. What happens next is that Abraham gets out some animals that he's going to give to the king as part of this process. And this is where we start to move from a vow to an oath. Again, there's several differences between vows and oaths. But one of the differences is this. A vow is conditional. An oath is unconditional. Okay? Salvation is based on an oath, not a vow, and I'll explain to you more of why that is in just a second. But we talk about your wedding vows. And that's not an accurate term. They should be your wedding oath. Because your wedding oath is unconditional. And marriages have problems when we start adding conditions. Straight up. He doesn't talk to me enough, therefore I'm going to withhold intimacy. And then he says, well, you're withholding intimacy. I'm going to go hang out with the guys at the baseball game or whatever, and we're not spending any time together. What's happening here? We've added conditions. But let me have you think about the vows that you made as part of your oath. I will love you in sickness and in health. I will love you for richer or poorer, for better or for worse. Does this sound like you're setting up conditions that you're going to be dragging out, or does this sound like you're making an unconditional oath a commitment to your relationship and your love. What does it sound like to you? Because to me it sounds a lot more like an oath than it does a vow. The other thing that's different about an oath generally involves some ceremonial process. And in biblical times, an oath included the shedding of blood. You would cut your wrists and shake your hands and mix your blood, and that was part of an oath. Okay? Well, Jesus shed some blood when he made the oath that he would take care of the payment of all your sins. And all you had to do is accept what he did. There's no other condition on it whatsoever. In other words, it's not conditional. Your sins are forgiven whether you accept that or not. The problem is if you don't accept it, when you stand before God, you can't say, well, this was all taken care of by Jesus because he shed his blood over here. It's like, well, but you didn't accept that. He said, I don't want that. I'm going to ignore that. So it's more than just I swear. It's even more than I pinky swear. Right? They went through this process. He said, look, I'm giving you this stuff as part of this oath to you. You heard me talk a few weeks ago when I spoke about a boss that I had that said, good enough never is. See, with a vow, you can say, well, it's conditional on these things. That's good enough. But an oath where it's unconditional, you got to walk the walk no matter what. Right? You walk the walk no matter what. You don't let yourself off the hook. Well, that's good enough. That'll work. Should be okay. No? You got some skin in the game? Did you swear an oath? Is there a mixing of the blood? Are you committed? That's way different than, yeah. Will you be my friend? Well, if we're talking about a vow, that's not going to count for very much. Will you be my friend at the level of an oath? No greater love hath any man than to lay down his life, the shedding of blood for his friends. We're not in a vow relationship with God. We're in an oath relationship with God. And then, as we read in the story, what do we see next? We see that Abraham gets out 7 additional sheep there and says, I'm offering these as well. And Abimelech says, what is that about? Now, he was a king. Do you think he was having trouble understanding the concept of what was happening? Was he struggling with, why is there 7 sheep? Or was he saying, wait a minute, what's the clause in the contract here? Right? Because I guarantee you, he understood the significance of the 7 sheep. I want you to understand the significance of the 7 sheep. When you have an oath, and you swear an oath, they call it the sevens. Because there's a payment in sevens that is made. It's part of the completeness. And so there's a significance to that. So he knew perfectly well what was being offered right there. What's this about? And Abraham says, look, these guys tried to take the well from me that I built. I want you to, as part of this oath, I want you to recognize the sevens. I want you to recognize that I built the well, that it's my well, that I have ownership of the well. Do you understand that? When we give our life to God, when he becomes our source, when that's what our source is, we belong to him. When we say, God, I give you my life, what are we saying? Paul said, I'm a bondservant to Christ, right? What are we saying? We're saying, I give you the title. I give you ownership. That's the relationship that we're engaging in. He is given, the payment for our sins. We're saying, I give you my life, God. It's not my own anymore. I give it to you. I've gone through with folks a number of different times on different issues, anger being one of them. When I talk about, did you give your life to Christ? Yes. I believe in God. No, that's not what I asked you. Did you give your life to Christ? God, I give you my life. Come be Lord, owner, ruler over my life. Okay? Did you do that? Yes. Okay. Then why are you angry? Well, they did this and that and the other thing. Yes. But you have no right to be angry anymore. You gave that away. That's God's problem. You're being mistreated? Take it to God. Let him be your defender. Let him take care of the problem. You gave him the rights to you. You don't have a right to be angry. And I'll tell you what, if you give it to God, let him deal with it, he is way better at it than you are. If he needs to convict somebody's heart, do you think he might be able to pull that off? Yes. More than capable of pulling that off. What does our contract mean? Our contract means that I've given it to God. Abraham built the well. He planted the tree. He worshiped God. He said, this is the well of the oath. He had just made the deal so that you admit that I built it, I own it. But he was rejoicing and thanking God because here's this well. God had already used it to help Hagar last week. So if we identify this well, is this a good well or a bad well? I think it's a good well. I think it's a well that reminds us of the contract that we have with God. The Old and New Testament are just contracts. But unlike what we do in our society today, I can sign a contract and I'll be really candid with you. I will bet you that most people sign contracts don't actually read them. Right? And then they find out, I said, what? I committed to what? Right? Because they didn't read it. And then here's the other thing. If you do read it, you don't understand it. But you don't want to look stupid, so you don't ask any questions to find out what it says. You just kind of go, whatever, and sign your name. And you don't have to sign in blood. You're able to sign with an ink pen, except now you can just sign with a phony baloney thing on the computer. Right? There's no cost in this process. There's no ceremony. There's no shedding of blood. We've become very flippant about all this stuff, right? Marriages break up. Well, it just didn't work out. Does that sound right? I will love you unconditionally, forever, unless it just doesn't work out. Right? I will get a loan to pay for me to go to college, and I will pay it back when I graduate from college at the specified rate and interest every month until it's paid off. Unless, like, that's a lot of money. I don't really want, it's going to be hard for me to do that. I don't know that I don't really want to do that. Maybe somebody will bail me out, pay it for me. No responsibility, right? None. We don't understand commitment because we don't make any. We don't understand God's love for us because we haven't done anything unconditionally. We do everything with a condition. What's in it for me? Right? There are people in their chosen careers or whatever who understand what it is to lay down your life. Soldiers in the U.S. military come very quickly to the top of the list in my mind. And then I think of things like on 9/11, first responders who were running into the building instead of out of the building. Was it because they got paid so much? No, it's because they swore an oath that they were going to do those things. They swore an oath that said, I will lay down my life, if necessary, in order to conduct my duties. Jesus Christ laid down his life for you. And we have this contract. And then we say, well, yeah, but it's not really how I see it. Well, did you read the contract? You might need to do that. Are you willing to swear to that? Put some skin in the game and say, you know what? I'll stop being deceitful. Because there's only two people being deceived by our sin. Us. And anyone stupid enough to not see it. Because God isn't fooled. Right? He knows your heart. He knows your motive. Right? You ever had, a little bit of that conviction falls on you and you're like, man, I need to read the Bible more. Man, I need to pray more. And then you kind of dismiss it away. Right? Who are you deceiving? God, I love you, but I don't want to talk to you and I don't want to spend any time, try that in a marriage, see how it works, right? Probably not so well. No. I saw a meme on social media this week, and it really kind of hit home. It said, remember, the same guys that couldn't pray with him for 1 hour fished all night. The same guys who couldn't pray for 1 hour fished all night. Now I'm going to say something. You have to love me, okay? I'm going to say it. First Saturday of every month, we do an hour of prayer in the sanctuary. And 12 people will show up, 6 people will show up, 15 people will show up. That's about it. Why? Well, I go to church on Sunday. You can fish all night, but 1 hour of prayer a month? Well, I pray at home. But there's something that happens when you gather together and pray. Well, I don't really like the format. Well, guess what? That can change. But whether you like it or not, God, I'd love to pray with you for an hour here, but, there's some rocks here in the garden, and it's not real comfortable for me to kneel on them. Right? It's a little breezy. I forgot my tunic, Really? But you fished all night because you do what you want to do. You do what you care about doing. But he sat and prayed until blood came out of his forehead. Right? Wasn't an easy thing at all. Now, I'm not trying to just guilt you, but what I'm trying to tell you is this. You need to look at the cost of the oath. He's paid it unconditionally. But you're saying, I accept what you did, and I give you my life. That's my 7 sheep, right? I give you my life. We can swear this oath right here. I give that back to you. But we don't do that because we're not committed about anything. So what's to be learned is that, we need to take seriously our relationship with God. Abraham planted a tree and worshiped and did all. Why? Because this is the place where we made the oath. He was serious about the oath that was made. So what do we draw from this? Well, here's what I will tell you. When you're serious about God, he's serious about you. Now, he'll be serious about you because that's who he is. He's God. But we want to see God bless. But we don't want to give anything to the process. My parents raised me in ministry. We had a singing group that traveled. Now, when we weren't traveling, we were in church on the worship team. They didn't call them that at the time, but that's what it was. We were on the worship team. I might have been leading worship. As I got a little bit older, I was probably teaching Sunday school, but before that, I was sitting in a Sunday school class. My parents both taught Sunday school. My parents were youth pastors for quite some time. When we were traveling, which was most of the time, we were at churches ministering to people, ministering at the altar, singing, preaching, whatever it might be. But what they taught me is that I needed to go to church prepared to let God use me for his purposes, whether I felt like it or not, whether I wanted to or not. And if I had an issue in my heart, I needed to have it resolved before my foot ever touched the platform or the front of the room or whatever. Not, I need to work this out before I pray with this person that came forward for prayer. That's too late. I need to have it worked out before I walk in the door. Whatever it is, God, you and I need to work this out because I need to have a heart that's right, ready before you and can hear what you want to say. If I haven't got that, then I have no business trying to minister to anybody. You say, well, that's kind of a high standard. Well, guess what? That's the oath. That's the contract. That's the deal. You want to be used of God? Come up to that level. Okay? And you may be sitting there, I want to be favored by God. I want to be used by God. Good. That's a place to start. Get serious about God and get serious about being readily available to him and an unconditional relationship with God. God, it's a contract. It's an oath. I swear this oath to you. Here's my 7 sheep. Right? That's where we need to be. Make God first, and he will lift you up. All right? You want to know how to make it work? That's it in a nutshell. Make God first. And that's it for this week.